What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we have got another piece of news, two bits of news in the same week. This is completely unheard of for Battlefield 2042, and today DICE have sort of relayed their thoughts on the next steps about the maps. Obviously in early March they kind of talked about what they're thinking for the map changes, and then they took on our feedback, and now this is essentially in relation to that. So we're going to be going through everything that they mentioned in this blog post. If you guys are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So like I said, in early March they did the essentially like part one of this. They talked about what they're thinking in terms of the map changes, where they're thinking of putting the flags and all that kind of thing, and then they essentially asked for our feedback so that they could, I guess, adjust to what they've initially thought and try and implement some of our feedback into that. Now this part two to that is essentially taking on our feedback and essentially just telling us about the changes that they've made since they did the first one, as well as a bit of like updated progress. They've shown a few really interesting pictures in this blog post which I'll show for you guys on screen, and then I will touch on this a little bit more later in the video. But they've actually also outlined what they're going to be doing in the next round of the core feedback loop, as they're actually going to be touching on the specialist in a few weeks from now. So I'll touch on that later on, but for today we're going to be going through the map changes. Now the first thing they touched on was traversal, so essentially just getting around the map, and they started off by saying, for traversal we outlined that travel time on foot between base spawn and flags was too long. Our proposed solution is to reduce overall travel time between these areas by moving them closer together. We shared that the first map in need of changes is Kaleidoscope, which through your feedback you've confirmed to us is the right call. However, you've also shared with us that Renewal is another map that really needs to see changes made to it. We hear you on that, and we're looking to deliver a refreshed version of Renewal alongside Kaleidoscope as part of Season 1 this summer. To give you a better understanding of what to expect, here are several examples of our work in progress intent to improve traversal across both maps. Now I'll show both of these images on screen for you guys. They have essentially just shown where they're going to be putting the flags, or at least as of right now where they're thinking of putting the flags on Conquest on both Kaleidoscope and Renewal. I will say that both definitely look better, and I do think that Renewal is actually one that kind of went under the radar a little bit, even though I guess they said that everyone was talking about it. But for me personally, I hadn't really seen that many people talking about it, but I personally thought that Renewal was one of the worst laid out maps in the game, and the way that they've got it now, it is definitely looking a little bit better. So I'm glad they've added that to their, top of their priority list as well, and it is exciting to hear that they are doing both of these maps in Season 1 rather than just Kaleidoscope, because that, I'm not going to lie, that was very disappointing when they first announced that they were only really touching on one map. Obviously they're getting around to all of them eventually, but to pretty much only hear that they were doing Kaleidoscope anytime soon, that was definitely disappointing. So to double that is definitely a positive step. Now they also touched on some vehicle changes in regards to the traversal time. Obviously vehicles are a great way to get around the map. A lot of people said that they wanted just more vehicles around the map. They did pretty much say that they aren't quite able to do that, at least not right now, simply because that will actually impact performance. So we're obviously all complaining about the game being, underperforming, low frame rates, all that kind of thing. If they add more vehicles to the map, it's only going to make that worse. So what they're going to be doing instead is essentially changing around some of the categories. So the M5C Bolt is actually going to be in the armored vehicle pool. It is currently a transport vehicle, and so they're kind of just looking at changing some of those around so that some of the vehicles that are more readily available can essentially fit more people in them. Obviously a Bolt, it's a transport vehicle, but it can only fit 2 people, so that kind of defeats the whole purpose of it. And so yeah, they've kind of just touched on changing around the classes, I guess, for the vehicles, which is definitely another positive step. Now, the next thing that they touched on is actually to do with the cover and the line of sight. Obviously, that's been one of the biggest issues with this game, is essentially it is a very, very open game. There's not a lot of cover on a lot of the maps, and they've actually shown some really interesting and pretty promising images here, if I'm going to be honest, showing off some, I guess, early concepts of what they're going to be doing to add cover. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was actually a little bit nervous that when they said they were going to add cover, it was literally just going to be like one sandbag bunker out in an open paddock, and that was their idea of adding more cover. But they've shown a few images here which I'll show on screen, and I'm actually going to try and show you guys a comparison, if I can get it to work, of what the area looks like right now on Kaleidoscope. It is, I think, heading into the final sector on Breakthrough. I think this is the area that they're showing here, and then I'm going to show you guys the picture that they've shown. It's essentially just concept art of what it's going to look like in Season 1, and as you can see, there is quite a bit more cover there. Now, it is still a little bit open. There's a little bit of, the bottom center section there, it is still quite open, but it is definitely still an improvement, and like I said, they are still still a work in progress. So there is a good chance they add more cover, but even this amount of cover, I do think that is definitely a pretty big upgrade. And obviously this is only one section of the map, but I assume that they're alluding to the fact that they're going to do this pretty much everywhere, or at least in the more like populated areas. I have no doubt there will still be big open areas out in the middle of nowhere, but it does seem like all of the highly populated and the high traffic areas, they will be filled with a lot more cover, like we can see in this image. So I thought that was definitely a good touch. And then they've also shown a picture here of just kind of one of the middle sections of the map here in the grass section. And rather than it just being flat grass, they've actually added a lot of like rock and just like different terrain. Obviously at the moment it's just essentially just flat grass with a few trees on it, but as you can see, they've added those rocks in there, and it looks like they've changed the elevation a little bit too. Like there is a little bit of a hill there on the left, so this is a lot more promising than I initially thought it was going to be. I will wait to fully judge it. Obviously when we get the update, I don't know what it's going to play like until we get it, but from what they're showing us here, it does definitely look like an improvement. And so I'm very interested to see whether this is like all they're going to do, or whether it's going to be in essentially every area of the map, or the main areas, rather than just a few spots that they've shown us so far. Now, another really big talking point was the immersion. They said here, you've expressed to us that you want it to feel like each flag and objective needs to have more strategic value and something that you feel is worth fighting for. As an example taken from the improvements we're bringing to Kaleidoscope, we're updating the gazebo on B1 into a military installment. We'll replace grass with mud and cover the area in barbed wire to better immerse it into our world and to bring improvements to the narrative of our battles. We want you to feel like the objectives are ready for battle whilst you are already fighting over them. It is fairly zoomed out, but you can see down in the bottom left of that picture there, they have kind of changed that little area where they've put in that little military sort of camp looking thing, and they've got barbed wire, and it's more of a muddy area than just plain grass. And that is a really big step for me personally. I'm very happy that they're doing that. Now that area of the map, to be completely honest, it's not that populated, I don't think, so that little, that one change is not going to make or break the map, but the fact that they are stepping more towards a bit more of a gritty type of map, making it feel like there is actually a battle going on, that is definitely a good improvement. And I do hope that they kind of do that in a lot of other areas too. For example, maybe just putting some sandbag bunkers around that main building in the center of the map, putting some barbed wire sections and stuff like that. Instead of it being clean cement, maybe they could have like mud tracks all over it from tanks driving around and stuff like that. If they can just touch all the areas of the map that that are highly populated and kind of make them a bit more gritty, then that will definitely make a big change in my opinion. And so I'm very interested to see whether they're only really talking about the section that they've added in that picture, or if they're actually going to kind of do that to every little section. So that will be definitely very interesting to see. Now, something else really, really important that I'm very happy about, and this is probably the biggest takeaway from this whole blog post for me, they are actually reducing the amount of attack vehicles and helicopters that can be used at any time in a 128 player mode, and they're changing that from 3 down to 2. So that means you will only be able to encounter 2 tanks and 2 attack helicopters at any given time, obviously per team, so that'll be double. But obviously you don't have to worry about your own team. And so moving forward in 128 player modes, there will only be 2 tanks and 2 choppers available at any time. Now, they didn't touch on the 64 player modes here, so I don't know if they're going to reduce that there or not. Maybe they'll just see how this goes, and then if they feel that it's the way to go, maybe they'll touch on the 64 player modes as well. I do believe 64 players already has less vehicles, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I thought this was a really positive change because the vehicles in this game are just completely overpowered, and I don't think the actual vehicles need to be nerfed. I think it's just the fact that there are so many of them, and so reducing them is definitely the best way to go in my opinion. Now, to finish out the blog post, they had a few things to say. They said, when can we expect the first updates in game? We've discussed several changes today that will not only make to maps but also to gameplay, such as how often or how many vehicles you'll see on the battlefield. The first changes we'll make are to vehicle play and availability, and those will be ready in the next update. Following that, you'll then start to see the first updates to flag, base spawn locations, and cover and line of sight on Kaleidoscope and Renewal. These changes will arrive during Season 1, and as we get closer to deploying those updates, we'll be able to share all of these specifics. We're now getting started on bringing these same standards of updates to our other launch maps alongside needed visual changes to make all of the maps feel ready for battle. There's a lot of work involved in doing that, so you can expect us to start discussing more about those updates during Season 1 and for the changes themselves during Season 2. So all of this stuff is still quite a while away. Obviously the vehicle changes are in the next update, which should be only about a week week or two away. I don't think they'll leave that till the end of April, so hopefully in the next couple of weeks that big update comes. They've said that there's going to be a few hundred changes in that, and obviously the vehicle changes are absolutely crucial to the game, so I'm actually very excited to see how that update goes. And then as for the rest of the stuff that they've mentioned here with the maps, that won't be coming really until Season 1. Now lastly, they've said when is the next core feedback. We'll return in a couple of weeks with a new topic for core feedback, this time focusing on specialists. We're currently preparing a similar post for you as we've done for the maps, and we're looking forward to getting that in front of you to open up that discussion. We know specialists have been a major topic for you, and we're looking forward to sharing with you what we've planned to improve their gameplay and fit into the world of Battlefield 2042. So that is pretty much it for the map changes, and then like they've said, they're going to move on to the specialist feedback loop there. There'll no doubt be the initial post in a couple of weeks like they said, then they'll pretty much take on our feedback, and then I'd imagine 2 to 3 weeks after that initial one they'll essentially do a follow-up just like this one. And so those 2 feedback loops are going to be pretty interesting to read, because I think the specialists are probably far more important actually than the maps, even though the maps are probably more crucial to the gameplay. But I think in terms of just the feeling of the community, the specialist system just has not worked, and I think a lot of people are going to be interested to see what they do there. There's been a lot of rumors that they're actually going to be tying those back into classes. There's still no doubt going to be specialists. I don't think they can possibly just delete the specialists, because that would ruin so much of the work that they've done, and the whole lore of the game is tied to the specialists. So I think the specialists will still be there, but I do think that they're probably going to end up changing them into classes, so there'll essentially be a few different specialists per class that you can choose from or something like that. But yeah, we're going to have to wait and see in a couple of weeks, so I'll definitely be keeping you guys posted on that whenever we hear some news on it. But anyway guys, that is going to do it for this one. I'm keen to hear what you guys think of these map changes, as well as the thoughts on the specialists in the coming feedback loop, so definitely leave your thoughts down below. And then like I said, whenever we get more updates like this, I'll be giving you guys updates right here on the channel. If you are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. And if you do want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. Thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.